Hey guys, welcome to SheKnowsArsenal. My name is Jessica. I'm your host. You can follow me on Twitter at @JustinoTweets and at SheKnowsArsenal. Welcome to another episode. On today's show, we're going to be talking mostly about Bukayo Saka's new contract. It seems like it might be close to coming, to fruition, close to being signed. So we'll talk a little bit about that. We're also going to discuss Bodo Glimt, the game that we play tomorrow in the Europa League. How much rotation is too much rotation? That's the question for today. Locatelli, there's been some rumors that Arsenal are interested in swapping Sambi for Locatelli. We'll talk about that. And Arsenal have extended their deal with Adidas, which seems to be one of the biggest, collaboration shirt deals in history. So we'll talk a little bit about that and then we can get into some questions. So make sure you guys like the video and subscribe to the channel. Let me know how you guys are feeling. Let me just go ahead and send out the tweet that we are live. I apologize for being late. It was a struggle to get all my stuff together today. Just let people know that we are live. Let people know that we are live. Let's go ahead. Let me just make sure I have all the stuff that I need. All the stuff. You guys let me know in the chat how you guys are feeling today on the eve before a game. I know I'm excited. I am excited. So let's see. Mackenzie Edwards says, yo, people, how we feeling? Amira says, hey, Justin, chat. Hope your day's been great so far. Mine has been. Landstone says, hey, Jess, watching from Kenya. Love your show. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Elliot Roberts says, afternoon, Jess. Looking lovely as ever. Thank you so much. Jack Bomber says, hey, guys, what we say in Arsenal FC on top. Another day on top of the table. It feels good to know that your team is playing well. Obviously, there's still a long way to go. And I don't think any of us are under the impression that like job well done, job done. Like nobody's saying that, nobody thinks that. But it just feels good to know that your team is going in the right direction. For a long time, I thought it was questionable. Like I know a lot of people that were questioning whether or not we were doing the right things, whether or not Arteta was the right guy for the job, whether or not getting rid of this player, signing this player were the right things to do. And now that we're moving in the right direction, it does feel like, whew, okay, now we could just focus on what's the next step. And yeah, all signs are pointing towards positive for Arsenal right now. Amira says, one more sleep till the mighty Arsenal play again. Exactly. Damon Pierre says, morning, my Gunners family. Morning to you as well, wherever you are watching in from. So again, we're going to be going over Saka's contract, Bodo Glimt, how much rotation is too much rotation, the alleged swap deal for Locatelli with Sambi, and the Adidas deal. Those are all the things that we're going to be talking about. So let's just go ahead and get started with the main part of the show, the main headline, which is this is coming from Footy Insider 247. So it's not like some people regard this particular outlet as quite reliable. For me, it's questionable. But at the same time, it does underpin what we already knew that came out from Sammy McBell the other day. And Sammy McBell kind of dropped the news that Bukayo Saka's contract is moving along. All signs point to it's going to get done. That there was confidence on both sides. That it was, it was going to happen. It was going to happen. The top English clubs have been monitoring his situation. This is coming from Fabrizio Romano for some time. But the good news is good news for Gunner supporters is that Arsenal is the player's priority. Saka loves the club and is negotiations in progress. So, I mean, all the signs pretty much point to Bukayo Saka staying at Arsenal. I don't think there's any U-turns or anything that we have to worry about in the meantime. And Footy Insider has put out a report saying that it's almost done. The deal is almost done. The contract is almost signed. A deal has been agreed in principle with Bukayo Saka. And that's kind of what we want to hear. He's been, before this season, I would say he's been top 2 of our most important players, right behind Thomas Partey. But because he plays so many minutes and what he was doing, from the moment he kind of came into the team, if we're honest, when he was playing left back, I just remember him being pretty much our only creative outlet. It was he was doing a lot of the creative work off of that left-hand side. Then when he moved to right wing, it was Partey to Odegaard to Saka was kind of our only way of attack. And if that wasn't there, we really suffered. And Bukayo has played a lot of minutes for Arsenal. He's done a really good job. And so he is more than entitled to a big contract. So yeah, the exact headline is Arsenal have reached an agreement in principle worth 200,000 pounds, two 200,000 pounds per week on a 5-year contract. That's from their sources. We don't know, and a lot of times they inflate. A lot of outlets will inflate the figures in order to get so people will talk about it and whether or not they're worth it and things like that. But to be honest, when I look at that number, I think Bukayo Saka is worth that to Arsenal Football Club. I think Bukayo Saka is worth 200,000 pounds per week for Arsenal Football Club. That would make him one of our highest earners. He'd be right in the ballpark between Thomas Partey and Gabriel Jesus. And when you think about it in terms of how we play, the players that if they were not there, we would suffer, that makes a lot of sense. He should be right in there with Thomas Partey and Gabriel Jesus. He is that important to us and he has earned it. Gabriel Jesus has just come. Obviously, his role is different. Thomas Partey is older, but Bukayo Saka at 21 years old, you cannot deny how important he has been to the resurgence of this team and this club. He is our franchise player. I know people don't like to hear that because it's not American this and that, but the comparison, it stands. He is the face of Arsenal Football Club right now, and so he needs to be paid in the same way. Now, I have seen some people say, is that too much for a 21-year-old? Are we paying too much for a 21-year-old? Age doesn't matter. If you're good enough, you're old enough. That's always been, the quote, good enough, old enough. And for me, how much a player is worth is more based on their importance to the team than how old they are. I find that to be a little bit strange that that's the way that people think about it. I do think that people sometimes do think about it that way because it's like, okay, well, if you want to get him signed up to another contract, how much is it going to cost you? But Arsenal need to worry about the here and now. What is it going to take to ensure that we don't see Bukayo Saka leave to Manchester City next season? What do we have to do to ensure that we have him for the next 2-3 seasons? What do we have to do to ensure that if for some reason we do not meet our benchmarks when the big teams do come for Bukayo Saka, we can get what he's worth? And that's the main focus right now. It's not so much about the next contract and how much that's going to cost. We will get to that point when we get there, and I have to be honest, I do think we'll be somewhat of in a Liverpoolish type situation when we get to that point, where there'll be 2 or 3 players and we're going to have to make a decision. But we're not there yet, so we don't have to really worry about it. But Bukayo Saka is 100% worth 200,000 pounds per week. And I just want to read some statistics out about Bukayo Saka because when you really look at it, he's been so good for us for a long time, and we've been a team that really has struggled to create and score goals, and he's been right up there really helping us with those things. So let me pull it up on my phone first because I have all my little receipts and stuff from everywhere. So this came out from the other day. Obviously, this is from Sky, no, the Premier League, and this was them trying to really talk about James Maddison, but it says England attacking midfielders Premier League since the start of last season. Only James Maddison has more goals and assists than Bukayo Saka since the start of last season. Only James Maddison. He has 17 goals and 10 assists since last season. Bukayo Saka, since the beginning of last season, has 12 goals and 11 assists. Phil Foden is behind him. And I think that says a lot because I think Phil Foden is the benchmark in terms of the young attacking players, wingers, those types of players. He is kind of the standard for us to measure Bukayo against. And he's right up there with him. last season, Bukayo Saka had 11 goals and 7 assists. Phil Foden, who won the Young Player of the Year, don't know how he won it, has 9 goals and 5 assists. He had an excellent season. If you know what I mean? Like there's not a lot of young players and there's not a lot of players period that were putting up those types of numbers. It says it right there. And he already has 1 goal and 4 assists this season, and I think a lot of us would say that he's not even at peak form yet. Like, at the beginning of the season, it was like, "Okay, he's definitely not up to speed." Now he's kinda gaining speed, and he's not even anywhere near where we know he's gonna get to when we get to the meat of the season. So, Bukayo Saka, for me, is top 3 best right wingers in the league, only behind Mohamed Salah and Phil Foden. He is top 3. I've seen some people say that he's top 5 right wingers in the world right now. I don't have the time to be looking through, what is Di Maria doing? What is Rafinha doing? I don't have time for that. But what I would say is just roughly, I would say he's probably top 10 in the world at the moment, probably closer to 5 than to 10. And he's in the top 3 for the best right wingers in the league, only behind Mohamed Salah and Phil Foden. That's it. Those are the only 2 players that I can think of that have had the consistency and the end product and the talent for us to be saying that they're better than him. And I think that that just speaks to how good Saka has been, moving from left wing or left back, left wing back over to right wing, where people said that he was never going to have the end product to play in that position, where still to this day people are acting like he does not have the skills and the the talent to play there, and he's proving those people wrong on a daily basis. On a daily basis, where we can continuously hear about players like Sancho and Antony and this guy and that guy and Grealish and this guy. But Kyle Saka is continuously doing it on a daily basis. I had another stat where it was more talking about the chances created for the players in our team. Let me see if I can find it as well. Shot creating actions. So Kevin De Bruyne has 42 shot creating actions so far this season. Martinelli has 34 and Bukayo Saka has 32. Gabriel Jesus has 31 and Granit Xhaka has 30. So our team has been very efficient, but what you can see is that there's not a lot of players doing better than Bukayo Saka. And if they are doing better than him, they either play on the best team in the league or they play for the team that he's already in. Bukayo Saka is a top player. We are lucky to have him, and he cost us nothing. He cost us nothing. I can't wait for him to sign this contract. So let's see what you guys are saying. Basil says, tie the young stars, bring Danilo in January, and we are good to go. Sheikh says, Saka is top 3 at the moment for sure. Mahrez isn't playing, but he's class. I mean, if you can't get into the team over Foden, then it just is what it is. But yeah, RJ says, I think only Bowen, and that's all. Elliot Roberts says, Saka top 3 wingers is the truth. I mean, you just have to look at it. You guys just have to look at it, Thab says Foden is not a winger, but he plays in that position. So whether or not you want to say he's a creative attacking midfielder or a inside forward or whatever, the last time I checked, the last game that he played right wing in a 4-3-3 for Pep Guardiola. So for me, that means that he's in the exact same position, not getting, wrapped up into it, because you can say that when Rashford didn't play through the middle, he played left wing, but we know him and Sancho are not the same types of players. So not getting locked into they're 2 different types of players and da-da-da. Salah, Foden, Saka. That's it, right now. That's where we're at. Deb M says the best team in the league. Just we are the best team in the league. For me, we are not the best team in the league. Manchester City, for me, is the best team in the league. We're the best on form right now in terms of the table, but I think we all can be honest with ourselves at the moment and say, yeah, it's probably Manchester City, but we're giving them a good run for their money. Pete says, hi, Jess, do you think Arsenal will get top 4? Yes, I do. I do think we will. And so, yeah, Saka definitely deserves this. I hear where people are coming from, where he's young and what's going to happen if we give him this and that. We have to focus on keeping him. That's what we have to focus on. And there's a lot of teams that are watching him and seeing what his contractual situation is, seeing if Arsenal make top 4, and we have got to nail this guy down to another contract. Jack Bomber says, Saka over Salah for me. Not for me, but I hear what you're saying. Everybody's entitled to their opinions. Thob says, no, but I mean, like his quality compared to Saka as a winger. Saka is much better than better. I mean, okay, I get what you're saying there. Um, yeah. I mean, I look at Foden as when people say the best young player in the league, they're usually talking about him. So I'm always looking to see where Saka kind of measures up with him. And quite frankly, there's not much in it. There's right now, there's not much in it. I think Foden has been probably better for longer, playing at a certain level, but also look at the team that he's been playing with, so it's amazing. Like, I really do think that Saka is more than entitled to being one of our top 3 players in terms of what they're getting paid. Leslie Montgomery says Saka or Martinelli. In what way? Like, what are we comparing them? Like, are we saying, who do I like better? Who do I think has the higher ceiling? Who would I keep? When you're, like, alone and you hear something and you're like, "Is somebody coming in here to kill me?" No, I don't think so. I think something just fell. But yeah, it depends on what are we talking about, this or that. But for me, Saka, if I had to pick which one, like one to sell or one to keep, I would keep Saka and probably sell Martinelli for obvious reasons. One is hell end and one is not. I think Saka is better than Martinelli right now. Still, I think Martinelli is having more of a moment. He's having more of his breakoutish season. He kind of broke out last season, but he's having another good season now. But I don't know. I feel like Saka is more established than Martinelli at the moment. So I would say Saka is better than Martinelli, but there's not a lot in it, if that makes sense. Um, Dev M says, wonder how Foden would do outside of a team like City. I wonder as well. Lionide says Foden is 2 months older than Holland. Well, if you're saying like, okay, well, when we're talking about young players, Holland doesn't play the same position as Saka. So we all know that Holland, I don't even think like Holland is a different, he's probably is the best young player in the league, but he might just be the best striker and the best player in the league as well. So we know what we're talking about. We know what we're comparing at the moment. Damon says, what is required from Saka at Arsenal is not required from Foden at City, but Foden and Saka is not far apart, and Pep did a wonderful job managing Foden. He did. I think Pep had the resources to be able to manage Foden in a way that Saka could not be managed. And some people say that uh, Arteta has, you know, overplayed Saka, but, like, the reality is Pep had so many good players in front of Foden that he didn't have to use him and he could ease him into the team. Saka at one point was literally life. If he did not play, if he did not have a good game, we couldn't do anything. And so we had to use him where if he had been somewhere else, he probably would have been able to be eased in as well. But I definitely hear what you're saying. I don't think Arteta really had a choice unless what you're saying is like Arteta should have not played him and played somebody else, and we know who that other person is, and I'm not sure that that person would have given us what we needed. Tony Smith says, "I hope you have your door locked, Jess." I do have my doors locked. I heard something like fall, and I was like, "Somebody coming in here to kill me?" It's like whenever you're alone, like, you always think it's, like, the worst possible thing. There's 100 of you guys in here, which is amazing. Like the video and subscribe to the channel. Emmanuel says, I always knew he would sign it. Saliba and Martinelli, I'm patiently waiting for. We do have to wait on those. Kingsley says, Saka isn't worth 200K per week. Before you know, our salary wage structure will become ridiculous. Saka is good, but when you start giving everyone will begin to demand that. So the salary wage structure thing is an interesting conversation because I do think Arsenal fans have it twisted because we got the wage bill down. I think there was a misconception that that wage bill would always stay low and we were going to manage it in a way more similar to a Leicester, more similar to a Brighton, teams like that are ran well. But look at Man City, look at Chelsea, look at Liverpool. All of these teams have multiple players, 5, 6, 7 players on 170 something grand per week, 200 grand per week, 150 grand per week. And so that's just the price you pay of being a big club. we got the wage bill down to get it right back up. I don't know who lied to you guys and said, "Okay, now we're just gonna kinda only pay players 50 grand per week and try to keep everybody lower." That's not gonna happen. And so you can disagree whether or not he's worth it or not, but in terms of the wage structure and how Arsenal are gonna manage the wage structure, Arsenal is a big club, and big clubs pay players 150, 175, 200 grand per week. That's just what it is. Arsenal will not be any different than anybody else, and it's not really based on how old you are, anything like that. It's how important you are to the team and how irreplaceable you are, and so, yeah, I think it's it's really, really I feel like a weird thing for me to hear Arsenal fans say things about the wage bill as if it was gonna be low like Leicester's. Like, that's just not we're different, we're different than those teams. We're not gonna ever be like them. And in terms of if you start giving it to everybody, everyone will begin to demand that. Well, if they're worth that, then we will give them that. If they're not, then they probably will leave. And that's just the reality. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't give Saka what he's worth because we're afraid that Gabriel is going to ask for that. If Gabriel asks for that and he is nowhere near our top 5 best players or top 5 players, a player that is irreplaceable either, then he will be sold. And that's the game. That's the game. So, yeah, for me, it's not about giving everybody those things. It's we won't give everybody those things, but we were never going to keep the wage bill down. Our wage bill is going to reflect what a team that is going to be trying to play in the Champions League will have. And if you go and look at Chelsea, you go and look at Man City, you go and look at Liverpool, they pay a lot of their players 150 grand per week. It's just what it is. Jack Bomber says giving Saka 200K is 100% justified. Giving Saliba isn't. Give him a new deal, but wait for the performance consistency until we go crazy. I don't think Saliba will be on the same wages as Saka. Saka is going to be paid like the franchise player, the most important player, the player that has earned it. Saliba is not quite in the same position, but he will be paid well. That's for sure. Andrew says, for those saying Saka shouldn't get 200 grand per week, just remember Rashford and Maguire. Sheikh says Saka deserves the wage for his performances and his output in the EPL. His numbers are up there with among the Premier League's best. Let's see. Also, we have to remember that we're getting information from people that it's not verified. So I tend to, whenever we see the wages that are reported, we often look at it in a couple of weeks, months, or whatever, and it tends to be a little bit lower than that. They tend to add performance related bonuses and things like that in order to really beef it up so that people will click. Like if it says 125 grand per week, 150 grand per week, nobody clicks on it. But if you say 200 grand per week, everybody starts to talk about it and say, is he worth that? So what I would just say is that I'm not that worried about it in terms of I'm pretty sure it's gonna be lower than that, but he needs to be paid like one of the best wingers in the league, and that's kinda what they get paid. Gunnar Thob says, "Would you take 120K as Saliba, though?" I hear some fans claiming that he is the club's best defender and should be on comparable wages. But Saliba just hasn't done it as long, and I feel like we have to wait on that one and see. I think Saka and Saliba are hard to compare because Saliba, we're projecting him to be something. He's already really, really good, don't get me wrong. He's only played 8 games in the Premier League for Arsenal. So, let's just, like, hold our horses as well. It also depends on how long we intend for him to be at the club. Those things matter, and, yeah, so I don't know if Saliba would accept that. I don't know if he would accept that. But I think we can't really compare Saka and Saliba though, because they're 2 completely different players with 2 different importances. Like they're they're one is Haaland, one is not. One has done it for us for a couple years, one is not. It's different. So I don't know what Saliba would ask for or accept. Ali A says, Jess, Liverpool had a wage structure, but we broke it last season with Salah, a new contract, and it took a long time because our owners didn't want to give him that big deal. Yeah, I mean, those things happen. those things happen, and I look at what Liverpool does because a lot of Arsenal fans continuously, like, compare Arsenal to Liverpool and say that's how we should do things. I do think Liverpool ran quite well, but at some point, you do end up breaking your wage structure. Moneyball only lasts so long. Moneyball only lasts so long. You can only bring up young players and pay pennies for them and pay them pennies and make them better for a certain amount of time. Once that group gets to a certain level and they fulfill what you expected them to be, the requirements to keep those players becomes different. And I think that's just the reality that some people need to come to. I don't think you're just going to be able to sit there and just continuously churn out young players and not pay them and pay them what they're worth and things like that to for the sake of the wage bill. But I hear what you're saying in terms of breaking the wage structure and stuff for certain players. I guess from a Liverpool perspective, would you have preferred them to break the wage structure to keep Mane as well, or are you okay with it just being Salah? Because at some point you do have to choose. I feel like we will have to choose at some point as well. So yeah, the reason why it doesn't look great right now, you guys, is because I can see that the internet is not um like really strong in here for some reason. The internet never works for me. It's really, really frustrating. So just work with me. I apologize for that. Um, so let's see. But yeah, we will see what happens with that. But he's more than justified for that. There's 31 of you guys in here. Make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel. Hopefully, the internet will like clear itself up. I have no idea why. Every single time I try to use the internet, it for some reason just like doesn't work. It's so annoying. So let's talk a little bit about Bodo Glimt. I think that there's a kind of difference of opinion from certain Arsenal fans about how much rotation is enough rotation. And I put out my predicted and preferred lineup, and it was pretty much all different from besides xhaka, everything it was different. It was fully rotated. Now, Bodo Glimt is hard to really know what they're all about because they've had some decent results. I know they beat Roma last season 6-1. They drew to PSV as well. So people are looking at them like they are probably a more difficult opponent than we probably think they are. They're in the Norwegian league and they're second in the Norwegian league. And, they're by all means a really good team where they're from. And am I wrong to say that their coach was the guy that coaches um Brighton now? Or did I make that up? I may have made that up. But I don't know how good they are, but we have such a hard game to play against Liverpool at the weekend. And for me, I would rather we'll be at home, so we'll be in front of our people. And I think even a rotated squad is going to beat Bodo Glimt. And if they're not playing well, then we could still bring on those players. But you guys can let me know how you feel about it. I'm feeling a little bit like I think we should go with a really rotated lineup because of how many games we have, and regardless of the opposition, we should be able to play a professional level game to beat them. So he said, Graham Potter went from Brighton to there. So yeah, I got that wrong. So yeah, my lineup was completely rotated, and we'll go ahead and build our lineup here really quickly. But that's what we're going to talk about right now, you guys, is how much rotation is too much rotation, and do you think it's risky to really focus on the Premier League and kind of leave it to the the backup players to handle this group stage fixture? We saw that like Man United struggled against Real Sociedad when they played players that don't usually start. But I feel like our players that don't usually start are not that bad. But I'll go ahead and show you guys what my lineup is, and you guys can tell me if what you would change. So I would go with probably holding here. He hasn't played in a while. Cedric, um, Kearney, Yeah. Sambi, xhaka, because you got to have somebody, right? Vieira. There he is. Marquinhos. I don't even know if he's in here. Marquinhos. I don't even know if he's on here. He's not even on here. Oh, he's not on here. What do we do? Okay, that's Marquinhos. I'm not going to put somebody else up there, but he's not even on there. How sad. How sad. Reece Nelson and Nketiah. So right wing is Marquinhos, but I'm not going to put somebody else up there. Something interesting that Arteta said in his press conference was that oh, let me share my screen as well because I haven't shared it with you guys. Present screen. Here you guys go. All right, so you guys should be able to see that now. So he did say that Arteta confirms that Nelson will have an opportunity, and the Europa League says he has matured in the last year or so and speaks about him having a special talent. Let's go back in time. Let's go back in time. So, do you guys remember when Arteta first came in to Arsenal? When Arteta first came to Arsenal, I swear the first player he kind of put his arm around was Reece Nelson. I remember against Leeds, I think he might have scored a goal against Leeds in the Carabao Cup, maybe, or the FA Cup, one of those. And I just remember Reece being somebody that Arteta really was like pushing for, but Nelson couldn't stay fit. And with what Arteta's kind of saying, it does feel like there might have been a little bit of an immaturity issue there. I might be reading into things, but that's what it feels like. He's insinuating or intimating there. And he's saying that he has a special talent. When he came out of the academy, he was supposed to be the man. Like, he was supposed to be the one guy that was going to make it to the first team. Since then, we have Emil Smith-Rowe and we have Bukayo Saka. We have some other players peeking through, trying to push their way into this first team. But Reece Nelson is 23 years old now and went on loan to Feyenoord, did okay. It took him a long time to kind of get going. But this is really his last chance. I feel like this is last chance saloon, last call for drinks. Like, it really is. This is it for him. And I would love to see him play in this competition because, one, I don't want Martinelli playing group stage matches in Europa League. And two, I kind of feel like that's what Arsenal has kind of been about under Arteta, is second chances and changing the narrative around certain players. And it's really worked for Granit Xhaka. It's worked for Nketiah as well. And I wonder if it will work for Reece Nelson. He's clearly a talented player that needs to stay fit and probably just needed to mature. How do you guys feel about Nelson coming back into the team? And do you think that this is kind of last chance saloon for him? And can he take advantage of that? Do you guys believe that Reece Nelson can kind of be a part of this team moving forward? Deb M says Nelson has been injured a lot, but I would love for him to make a comeback like Nketiah. Gunnar Thab says, I'm curious about this Reece thingy. I wonder what this special quality is. Well, the reality is that, like, we know what his special quality is because we've known about Reece Nelson for years now. He came from the academy. He was one of the most talented players to come out of Hale End in the last couple of years. And I thought Reece Nelson, like close control, skills, all those types of things, he really thrived. And I thought in the interior, he was quite good, where I didn't really see him as a touchline winger, but more of oddly, a Sancho type player, somebody that's not super direct, but has that in tight spaces can do something there. He didn't have enough end product for me, but hopefully he's worked on that. But we know Reece Nelson has something, and I think Arteta saying that will really help Reece. People, when players come out of Hale End, you do want them to do well, and so this is it. For me, this is it. Nelson, the Brazilian. Let's see what he's got. Dev M says lineup looks good, rotates most of our squad. Just wish we could rest Xhaka as well. I wish that as well. But there's always one or two players that has to play like every single game just to maintain a certain level of professionalism. And I think Xhaka does bring that. we don't really want to see Thomas Partey playing. We don't really want to see Ben White playing either. We want those players to be rested. So we have to sacrifice Xhaka. And I kind of feel like he rates that. I kind of think he likes that, being able to play most games. Bodo says, I agree. Arteta likes Reece. Shake says, I still have a spot for Reece Nelson, to be honest, for years now. And the one thing I will say that I think that this speaks to the misconception around Mikel Arteta that when he loans players out, that means that he fucking hates them. I feel like that has kind of been like a weird narrative that's been spun over the last couple of years. If you're loaned out, he does not like you. And I don't think that that's what he was feeling for Reece or Saliba or even maybe Nuno. It's just some players need to go out and learn, or be away from the team to be able to thrive a little bit. And I think that's really what's happened with Reece Nelson. He was the first player that Arteta was like, this is my player, and he's such a good technical player that has a lot of skills in him. He just has to be able to come out in a high level matches. That's really what I think he struggles with. Jack Bomber says lineup is good except Xhaka, rest in please. Gunnar Thab says, haha, I'm oddly excited for him, to be honest. What if he does play and then he's like no good and it's all for naught? That would suck so much. Denver says, let's not forget that Reece was playing ahead of Pepe COVID season. I think last season not having Europe was the issue. Now he's back. Good point. Blaze says, I will not be surprised if Nelson will stay and sign a new contract like Nketiah did. With Arsenal, our academy is such a big part of the fabric of the club. And I do think that generally the club wants to keep as much of the talent as they possibly can and use it to the best of their ability. If Nelson can realize his talent, that might keep us from having to just buy a backup or whatever. And I know that we still want we want new players and we need new players, but sometimes these types of players fill in holes in the squad and we don't have to buy backups, which it's such a no-no for me to buy backups. It's just not something that I feel like we should be doing with the type of talent that we have coming through our academy. A cow says Arteta personally likes Nelson and wants him to succeed. He likes technical players. Gunnar V says, I want to see if Reece has some consistency and intensity to his game, things Pepe struggled with. That's very, very true. Denny says, Nelson is a good player, dribbler. He gave an interview at Feyenoord and he talked about poor diet, hydration, and rest, similar to Smith Rowe. He will need time to get his rhythm back, patience. So, yeah, I agree with you. I don't think that he's going to come into this game and be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe we have this player. But if you have him and Marquinhos kind of in these early stages deputizing for Saka and Martinelli, I think that's the best that you can hope for before we get to the January transfer window. That's definitely what I want to see. Saida says, with Nelson, it's all about mentality for me. If he takes his career seriously, then we may see his levels rise. I agree. Bass says, we all love the Hale End boy, but we need someone better than Nelson. And again, wanting Nelson to realize his talent and potentially wanting him to be in the team does not mean that you're innately saying that we don't need to still invest. I'm saying that with the type of academy that we have, being able to use players like that to fill in squad roles instead of having El Nenis, who we bought to be a squad player and it's never really worked out. I don't think that serves us in any way. Having Nketiah, Nelson, those types of players be squad players, if it doesn't work out, then we sell them like we did with Iwobi, and that's good for Arsenal. But if it does work out, our academy is so good. Look how our players can become. So for me, it's not really about if Nelson is in the team, that means we won't invest. It's about what position could he be taking up. We never really addressed the Pepe situation. Emile Smith Rowe is not fit, so Nelson, I think, is the best alternative in the short term. I mean, what else do you have to lose? Denver says, I do feel Arteta rates Reece. If not, he would have sold or loaned. I can't lie, Jess, he was excellent in the COVID season. So yeah, we just kind of need to also remember that he hasn't played with the team a lot and it might take him a little bit. But I look at this team plus Marquinhos, who's supposed to be on the right-hand side, and say, Is this team good enough to beat Bodo Glimt? Absolutely. We know what the issue is with these teams that play in the Europa League is when they're heavily rotated, they tend to be a little bit clunky and don't necessarily have the same fluidity and smoothness as the first team. And sometimes that hurts us. But I look at the likes of Tomiyasu and Kieran Tierney, Xhaka, that midfield, and I think we should be okay. Do I think that it's going to be a blowout? No, but I think we should be okay. One thing that I have seen from the team is that the team that plays in the Europa League and the players that come in off the bench still look like they're playing the same type of football. And I think that speaks to their level and quality. When we were playing, some players that would play in the Europa League, they wouldn't be able to play the same style. So it would be completely different in the Europa League. And so if we can continue to play our way, albeit it won't be at the same level because it's not the same level of player, but if we could play the same type of football and those players could click just a little bit, I think we'll be fine in this group stage. I could be wrong. I could be screaming at the TV screen tomorrow like, "What? Get Jesus in there. Get Saka in there. This is shit." But I'm going to go with I think these players are good enough to do the job. And I just don't want to see the likes of Saka, Martinelli, Jesus, Thomas Partey, and Saliba and Ben White playing in games like this because we're going to need them for this Liverpool game. I think that game is going to be harder than some Arsenal fans are saying. Amira says, hearing how ESR and Balogun talked about Arteta sending them out on loan to help them grow as men, I feel like it was the same for Reece. It's more about mentality than football ability. Fair enough. And I wonder if Arteta sends them away almost in a Arsenal is kind of like when you look at what they have in that academy and how they grow up, at Arsenal. It's a very, I wouldn't say it's like a, posh existence or anything like that, but it is nicer than what other players have to go through, at clubs that don't have the same level of money and resources, and how young players have to come up through those ranks. And maybe it's just a little bit of like, this is what it could be like for you if you don't make it at Arsenal. It'll be a lot harder. It's not the same as being at Arsenal. And you need to be thankful when you're here and realize that it's kind of like a blessing to be here because it's different out there. It is different. I'm sure that they've seen that out on their loans. I'm sure Reece Nelson saw that at Feyenoord. I'm sure. Let's see. You guys are saying stuff about, let's see. Vance says, Jess, who do you have on the bench? Partly. I mean, I think you have to have some of our starters on the bench just in case things go left. So I would imagine the starters would be on the bench, most of them. But if there is two players that I would say under no circumstances I would allow to step on the field, it would be Saka, Jesus, and Partey. Those three players under no circumstances I would want them out there. Those players need to be ready for Liverpool, and we cannot risk them. There's 150 of you guys in here. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. Ollie A says, Jess, as a Liverpool fan, we can't play the same formation that we did against Rangers for you guys because you will outrun us in the midfield. If Klopp is brave, he will do the same formation. I heard a lot of that yesterday on the match reaction after your game against Rangers, is that a lot of Liverpool fans want you guys to continue to play a 4-2-3-1 in order to make sure that you have that stability that you didn't have in the 4-3-3. And I have a feeling that Klopp will do it. It's going to be a difficult game. I don't think it's going to be as easy as some Arsenal fans are saying, but I still back us to get the 3 points. But yeah, that 4-2-3-1, I do think made Liverpool look more sturdy, where they had looked really porous in midfield and in the back for the last couple of games. Darren, like my father before me, says, this is the team I would play, except I would swap the center backs over and play Tommy on the left side, as I think Tierney and Tommy are stronger defenders. So I'd spread them across the back line. Good point. Let's see. Nai Mutale says, Lokonga is going to cost us, though, a lot with holding. I don't think so. Lokonga played against Aston Villa. He played against Fulham as well, and he didn't cost us. The only time that I felt like Lokonga being in the team cost us a little bit was against Manchester United, and I have a hard time believing that Bodo Glimt is going to be to the same levels of Eriksen and Bruno Fernandes and Rashford. So for me, if you're saying that Bodo Glimt is at the same level as Aston Villa and Fulham, then yeah, we need to be actually playing a much better lineup, but I don't think any of us actually believe that, right? So Lokonga's does not hurt us, in my opinion, against teams like this. It's the top teams where he costs us, and I don't think that Bodo Glimt is that. Let's see. Jason Gooner says, "Where's Hutchinson rated? Where's Hutchinson rated 10 million because it's not on transfer market?" Oh, you guys are talking to each other, I think. So yeah, I think but this isn't a big game. I mean, it is, but it's not. You know what I mean by a big game. I don't think that this is a big game. Matt G says, "I'm starting Jesus, even if he has to come off at halftime. I feel more comfortable with him in our starting attacking front three." That's an interesting point, Matt. I mean, you don't trust Nketiah to get a goal, to play well in these circumstances. That's interesting. And We Move says, "Plus we were at the Emirates." I think that's a big point. We Move, I love your Avatar. Friday is one of my favorite movies. I watch Friday at least 3 or 4 times a year, every single year, and I watch Friday After Next every Christmas. It's one of my favorites, but Friday is one of my favorite movies, and I see the little part where they're like, "Damn!" I'm actually gonna watch this when we get off of here. Maybe after the football. So yeah, but let's go ahead and give our score predictions really quickly for the game before we move on to the next couple of points. You guys give me your score predictions in the chat for Arsenal versus Bodo Glimt. Let's see. Let me write this in here so you guys can There you go. Let me know your predictions. And while you guys are giving me your predictions, I will set up the next little section that we have here. Locatelli. We're gonna keep this one short. We're gonna keep this one real short. Let's see what you guys are saying. Score predictions. Matt G says 3-1 Arsenal. Denver says 3-0. Kiro says 2-0 to the Arsenal. True Sets Free says 4-0 versus the Farmers. James Bond says 4-2 Arsenal. I hope we don't give up 2 goals. Dev M says 2-0 win for the Arsenal. Clucking Bell says 8-0 Arsenal. Saida says 2-1 or 3-2. Baz says 3-1 to the Arsenal. I think most of us are pretty confident. Hopefully it goes that way, and we'll see how things pan out tomorrow. So moving on just to kind of like the next little bit here is there are rumors out there that Arsenal are reportedly willing to offer Albert Sambi Lokonga to Juventus in exchange for midfielder Manuel Locatelli in January. The exchange is a concrete possibility for both clubs. Now, let me break this down for you guys, and how I think about transfers is I always kind of believe that there's some little bit of truth in most rumors. Now, is it ever it's not always as due to go through or due to come to fruition as maybe it feels, but I do feel like there's maybe an agent speaks to the club, at the very least, or Juventus and Arsenal through intermediaries talk about a player, and that a journalist will get a hold of that and turn that into an article, but really it was just, contact or communication or something like that. Sambi Lokonga has been linked to a move to Serie A more than once. And for me, there's no smoke without fire. And that doesn't mean that we are actively looking to offload him, but it could just mean we are open to opportunities to use him to get somebody else that we want. Or maybe Sambi is somebody that we're looking at that needs maybe a loan, to get that solidity so that he can be somebody that we use a little bit more. Because the reality for me with Sambi Lokonga is that if El Neni was here, he would not be getting any playing time. He wouldn't get any playing time if El Neni was here. And, Vieira and ESR, like when ESR comes back, the way that xhaka is playing that position, I feel like that is tailor-made for Emile Smith-Rowe. Xhaka is no longer the player putting the eye through the needle passes. He's the guy arriving in the box. And who does that better than anybody else is Emile Smith-Rowe. That's not a Sambi position the way it's being played by Xhaka. It's an Emile Smith-Rowe position. It's a Vieira position. And so those two positions, Xhaka and Odegaard, Vieira and Emile Smith-Rowe, when he comes back, I don't actually see where Sambi is going to fit in the short term. Now, maybe in the long term, he can become that 6, which is, I think, the reason why we brought him in. But I don't necessarily see him as one of the 8s in the system, the way that we're playing now. And so maybe it is best for him to move to another club in a loan situation or whatever, you know. So I don't think that I think there's something to this in terms of maybe Sambi's agents have been contacted, something like that. That doesn't mean that it's going to happen. Now, in terms of this swap deal or something for Locatelli, I think swap deals are quite hard to do because it's hard to find two players that have equal importance and value to the players that are exchanging them. So we can just set that part aside. Locatelli, by all metrics that I'm looking at here on FBref, has been quite average since he's been at Juventus. And the only thing I will say about that is that the entire team is playing under par because Allegri is terrible and they're not playing very well. So it's hard to know how good he's actually playing, what he looks like, and all that kind of stuff. But it doesn't seem like his spot is very concrete. And so, you know, is this a player that I feel like now that we've kind of moved past that and we're in a new era of Arsenal that I feel like he's the right player for us? I don't know. Is he the player that you feel like is going to play at the base of our midfield alone in that Thomas Partey role? I don't know. Is he going to play the xhaka role? I don't know because he doesn't necessarily score goals. He's not necessarily somebody that you know, I think is similar to Thomas Partey. On FBref, he is really more similar to Bentancur and Højbjerg. You know, that's who he compares to, but then also they play more similarly, you know, in terms of the two teams. So it's hard to know whether or not this is the type of player that I would bring in, or I'd be happy to see come in January. But I'm more interested to see what you guys think because I've already seen in the comments a couple of times that we need to bring in a midfielder. We know Sammy McBell said that Arsenal are keen to bring in a midfielder in January. What does this midfielder need to be like? What are the names that you think are, you know, attainable in January? That's difficult. But yeah, Locatelli, I can never really put my finger on it because when we were linked with him before, I have to be honest, I wasn't really sold on him at all as a player. I thought he looked talented on the compilations. I thought also at that same time the Euros were going on too. And so he was playing with Italy and Italy looked quite good. But since then, I haven't really heard much about him. Nobody's really raving about him. And he just has kind of went off into obscurity. So I want to know what you guys are thinking. The Truth Sets Free, thank you so much for your super chat. I really appreciate it. Denver says, if we want to swap, I'll take Moretti over Locatelli, then I'm cool. Bro Pro says, Allegri tax is massively applied. Olivier says, Danilo is coming, in my opinion. My thing about Danilo is I'm not sure that he's somebody that is if we are, let's say we are in a top 4 race / a title race, let's just say that in January, February time, which is really when you can start talking about where you're actually at in the grand scheme of the season. Is he somebody that you feel like if Thomas Partey were to get a 8-week injury is going to slot straight in and do anything for us? I'm not sure. So yeah, you know, I'm not sure that Danilo is the right signing in January. I think January you want to bring in players that are going to catapult you in onto the next level or solidify whatever race you're in, solidify your position in whatever race you're in, get you over the line. And so for me, I'm not sure that that's Danilo in January. Baz says we should go back in for Douglas Luiz. Who's better, Douglas Luiz or Locatelli? You guys let me know. I mean, Locatelli just seems like the sexy option, like oh Locatelli, oh manja, oh spaghetti, you know, like that was so racist. I'm sorry, that's not the way I wanted it to seem, but he seems like he's the more sexy option because he's from a different league and you know all that kind of stuff, mysterious. But Douglas Luiz is somebody that we know, you know, is somebody that we've seen. So do you like the more familiarity or are you going with the more foreign gem? What are you going for? You guys do not even mind what I just did right now. Don't even mind. Yes, better Sambi would. Naeem Mutali says. Daniel says, I can't believe I just did that. You guys know I didn't mean nothing by it. Daniel Small says, Danilo or Luiz. For me, I'd rather bring Danilo. I'd rather bring in Douglas Luiz in January because at least I know that if Thomas Partey were to get like a long-term injury, I'd feel comfortable with him playing in the league. And under pressure because when we get to April, if you guys haven't seen our April schedule, that's when I really think we're going to see like who we are. It's going to be close to the end of the season. We're potentially still going to be in Europa League. And so it's going to be a pressurized scenario where if potentially you're stepping in for somebody like Thomas Partey, it's like a double whammy there. And so who can actually maintain a certain level under that level of pressure? Is that Danilo coming from the Brazilian league, 22 years old, never played in the Premier League before? Not sure it is. So I would have to go with Luis in that one. Big White Clock says that's a spicy meatball. Daniel says Premier League experience and Arteta knows him. Bro Pro says talent. Teta talent ID I trust. Baz says that was a little offside, Jess, but funny. Yeah, it wasn't right. I shouldn't have said that. I'm sorry. JJ says we need someone from our academy since academy players are becoming uneasy for not making into the main team. This is why someone to leave. Fair enough. Hitanch says Ruben Neves or Declan Rice are the players that you would prefer or you think could step in. Matt G says, I think we should put in a £5 million bid in January for Douglas Luiz just for the LOLs, just for the lols. Yeah, potentially. Dev M says Luiz seems like a short-term fix. I think the thing about it is that if we think about the way our team is and squad building is it's not just about the player that's going to eventually take over for Thomas Partey. It's the player that's going to step in for El Neni because El Neni is not going to be here after this season. His deal will run out and he'll be gone. And so what we're looking at is that it's a player that comes in as a short-term fix. Is he better than El Neni? And would you feel comfortable enough for him to take over for El Neni long-term? As a player in your team that's probably not the best player in the world, probably not somebody that's going to light the world alight, but somebody who definitely maintains the floor of the team. And then you look for somebody that can play the Thomas Partey role, which will inevitably end up being a big signing. Somebody like I don't know who said it earlier, but was saying a Declan Rice or a Ruben Neves, those types of signings. And so, yeah, I think Douglas Luiz can definitely be the El Neni replacement. But can he be the Thomas Partey one? No, that's definitely not what he's going to be. The Truth Sets Free says Locatelli was great in 2020, 2021, but if he stays at that level or better. Bro Pro says maybe Jude Bellingham, the player Ian Wright's talking about. I doubt that. I'm sorry. I just don't think we're going to get him. Denver, I don't even think we're in the conversation. Denver says we need to sign a player that sounds like pasta, although it makes me hungry every time. Oh God, I wish I'd never said that. Oh my gosh. That was something I should have kept to myself. Yo-Yo says Party El Neni, xhaka, best years are now at best. So yeah, I think Douglas Luiz could do a job in the El Neni role. What I find interesting is that I do think that we might be looking at a player like a Declan Rice. I wouldn't be surprised if we were because he fits the profile in terms of probably what we would need once Thomas Partey is done playing. And you need somebody with an engine that can kind of do both sides of the ball. Not necessarily somebody that's going to score goals, but is good on transition, is probably has the same ideals in terms of Premier League proven, young, we have an English core as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if we were looking at Declan Rice because while everybody is looking at Jude Bellingham, there probably will be somebody looking at Declan Rice. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's us. So though, like I said, there'll be a group looking at Jude Bellingham. That will be, your Liverpools and your Man Cities and, those guys. And then there'll be the teams that feel like they could bring in Declan Rice. And we might be the team that's looking at him. But he's not somebody that I particularly, love or think that he's worth the amount of money. But, if that's who the club wanted, then that's who I would just have to get over it, right? JJ says, what about Nuno? Dude needs confidence, but he's physical and his ball distribution is so good. Watching Nuno yesterday, I saw the same player that I'd seen before. I think We'll see where he's at when he comes back in the summer, but I have a feeling that Nuno will get sold. I just have this weird feeling. Wira says, "Why are we overlooking Ward Prowse? The disrespect, because he's shit. Because he's shit." No, I mean he's a good player, but you know, what is his ceiling? What would it cost to bring in Ward Prowse from Southampton? Obviously, you get English tax. He's in his prime years now. He's 27, and so you're thinking about 35, 40 million. I'm sure Southampton would ask. That's their talisman. They're not going to give him away for cheap. Um, would you rather not spend the money on somebody who's 22 years old that possibly has like a much higher ceiling? That's probably what I would do. But Ward Prowse is a good player, but I also kind of think that I would only really want him on the field for free kicks. But yeah. Blaze says, "Damn, Jess, let us dream a little bit about Jude Bellingham." I keep shutting it down. Like, I'm sorry, we're not getting him. Emmanuel says, "Jess, our midfield is seriously aging. They're old. And so we need to start moving into that, like, okay, future proofing that group. El Neni's going to be gone this summer, but both of Thomas Partey and xhaka are 30. And so, yeah, they could, especially the way that xhaka is, he could probably play for 2 more years, but we still need to bring in that player, so there you go. Now, so that was kind of like my thoughts on the Sambi, Locatelli thing. There's nothing really concrete on it. I just wanted to chit chat with you guys about it. And last but not least, like the last thing I wanted to touch on was the Adidas deal. And so after the Adidas renewal with Arsenal, which I think goes to 2030, which is 8 more years. The North London club now holds the most valuable jersey deal in the Premier League. That's really, really good. And I'm happy about it. You guys know, like I'm all about the kits. I love it. I am the exact type of fan that the Cronkies love. I love everything about all the drip and every single kit that they come out with. I like it. And I love Adidas. I would never want to go back to Puma or Nike. I think they're both crap. And so having Adidas, I think for that amount of time is really good. Vinay is the person that deals with the commercial deals. I think he did a good job with this one. Not like I'm a financier or whatever like that, but Adidas long-term sponsorship of Arsenal was extended a few days ago. The deal will now run into the end of 2029, 2030 season, with its value increasing for the first time since 2019 from 60 million pounds to around 75 million pounds report. And that's from Darren Arsenal. The 8-year contract is worth 600 million pounds. It's really good. Cash money. So yeah, I just wanted to touch on that. I don't know how you guys feel about that. Some people hate the kids, hate that Arsenal continuously asks for money and we're not winning anything. But I think it's important that we make sure that we keep our commercial deals coming in and that side of things are being taken care of. And I don't want Nike and I don't want Puma. So this is right up my alley. I'm loving it. Big White Clock says, "Let's hope they release some more originals." Yeah, let's hope that. Baz says the Adidas merch has been top draw. What I love about it is that they always shade the other teams. Like, first of all, they gave Manchester United like a cheap version of our home kit, which I loved. I was like, haha, they didn't even try to make something original for you. And nobody's stuff really looks like ours in terms of like the level of quality and the thought and the collaborations and things like that. Adidas love Arsenal. Like Adidas, or I know you guys say Adidas, like most of you guys say Adidas, but I say Adidas, sorry. But like I don't say Nike either. I say Nike, sorry. But yeah, I think they love us and I love them. Bro Pro says, "Funnily enough, Adidas can't mostly exclusively wavy for our club and only." Exactly. Um, Let's see. Absalat says, "Year in, year out, we have the best kits." Exactly. Arsenal Fashion Club. Maybe we'll become Arsenal, like good at actually on the pitch club as well. Like if we could do both at the same time, that would be great. Let's see. The True Says Free says, "I like Puma." Yuck. When we had those Puma kits, do you guys remember? Like, I think the cringiest part about those kits were how our players behaved in those kits because it was so tight. Giroud and Ramsey are the two players that I'm thinking of mostly in that dark blue gold kit. It was so tight and they all had their hair it was like perfectly coiffed, perfect tan. perfect highlights. And I was like, you guys are acting a fool. Like, you do not need to be doing all this. But it was the kits that made them do it. Even though I did like the Puma kit that was like black and pink, I did like that one. Blaze says, Jess did the Puma kit. Did Puma kit really was awful? I didn't like it. Like, I didn't like it. I thought it was too tight. I didn't like the fit. And I liked like when we were with Nike, that was great. And then when we got with Adidas, it was great. When we were with Puma, I was like, mm-mm, this is not for me. Baz says, to spend 150 million, we have no Champions League. We need this deal, fair play, and well done to the club. Exactly, those things that matters. It's like every little penny really counts for Arsenal, and so hopefully we will be in Champions League next season. We really need to be in it. I cannot stress, and I know you guys know this. I'm not telling you guys anything new. We have got to get into the Champions League. I do not want to be in the whoa cup anymore. I'm done. I'm finished. Like I'm cooked. And so now it's like we need to move into that next era. I want to go back to the champions. Like this is just not it for us. It's not a good look. Sam says, Jess, I love your show on the terrace. You always spit facts. I just say what comes on my mind. But thank you so much. I really appreciate your support. iGamer says some of the Puma kits were all right. Yeah, some of them were okay. It's just not, it wasn't for me. Like I just wasn't feeling it. So yeah, but you guys, we're gonna go ahead and get out of here. There's football tonight. I also want to watch Friday. Now that I saw one of you guys had your avatar, I'm like, yeah, I want to watch that. So make sure you guys like this video and subscribe to the channel. Make sure you guys are following me on TikTok and Instagram. I'm creating more content on there. I'm making little clips. I'm clipping up my pieces on the football terrace as well. So if you want to see more like bite-sized content and more funny stuff and lifestyle stuff, please follow me on there. You can follow me on Instagram at Jacinho Graham and on TikTok at Just Jacinho. So yeah, I'd love to see all you guys on those platforms. If you guys are there, you guys can always tweet me on Jacinho Tweets. And I really enjoyed hanging out with you guys, and I cannot wait to see what we do tomorrow. Yeah, bye guys. Well.